Hello, welcome to Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. This is a very exciting day for me because this is going to be my review of the Helsmiths of Hashut Battletome. I'm going to be doing it live with the Twitch chat, and therefore it's going to be a long stream edited down into a short video, which I hope you are enjoying if you are watching this on YouTube, and you can support me by liking the video, leaving some comments, and tell me what your thoughts are on this book. I'm very excited for the Helsmiths of Hashut, a new army for Age of Sigmar to be released, which is very exciting with that big launch box. A very exciting element about it is that most of the kits can be built as dual kits as we go through, and as a quick kind of TLDR before we get into it, you can probably build one version of each of those and be very good, which is quite nice. Now, there are no manifestations and there is no terrain piece, which has been a very normal thing that's happened for Age of Sigmar 4, or the armies that have been in Age of Sigmar 4, but do not let that put any dampeners on your spirits, because that does mean likely in the future we will give us they will give us even more of the Helsmiths of Hashut, which is very exciting. So hopefully wave 2 coming soon. So this will be the review. There will be no points in the review. We won't be talking about points because they don't release points along with the book. They release those at a later date, which is exciting because I'll do a follow-up video, and in that follow-up video I'll obviously be covering the armies in like a tier, or the units in a tier list based on the points. And the points are going to be very impactful for how this army plays, in my opinion. So I'm super excited to get into it. Let's start with the battle traits. Hope you like this review. Thank you to the chat. Thanks to everyone. Let's get into it. So if you're new to Age of Sigmar and you've never collected an army before, you have battle traits for the Chaos Dwarf army. There are actually 3 battle traits, although one of them is a command ability. These are effectively your army special rules, and they're quite interesting because they're to do with burning terrain or desolating terrain on the field, and then generating your resource that you'll use in your army called demonic power points. Every war scroll in your army, with the exception of Hobgrots, have the ability to be upgraded or powered up via demonic power points, or DPP, which we may refer to it for the rest of the video. And you generate those demonic power points in a couple of different ways. Mainly it's from your battle traits, but there's also a heroic trait, and there's also a unit that's going to help you generate demonic power points as well. So let's start with the first way that you'll generate them, which is a battle trait called Leave the Land in Ruin, which is once per turn army at the start of any turn, which also means at the start of your opponent's turn as well. Any means every. So your turn and your opponent's turn, you're going to be able to use Leave the Land in Ruin. What happens is you pick a terrain feature or an objective that does not have a friendly desolation token, so one that hasn't been desolated already, and is contested by a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut unit that is not in combat to be the target. Now, some good news about this is it does not specify non-Hobgrot units. Your Hobgrot unit have a pre-game move where they're going to be able to move after deployment is finished. They're going to be able to move up the board. That's quite good for desolating pieces of terrain early, as well as providing a screen for your army. So you've got some real opportunity to make it so that you get objectives or terrain deeper into your territory early, which is quite nice, and then you can use your back terrain and back objectives later on to generate and desolate, which is pretty good. So when you've done that, the effect is you give the target a desolation token. I should also point out that contesting an objective means being near an objective, within 3 inches of an objective. So that's what that means. So desolate terrain, desolate objectives, 1 per turn, which means at the end of battle round 5, there will be 10 pieces, 10 objectives and terrain, as a total that will have been desolated. So you will generate 10 demonic power points from it. We'll talk about how that works now. So harnessing demonic power points happens once per turn army at the start of your turn. It's quite important, the timing. It's in your turn only, not in the opponent's turn. So you must use this ability at the start of each of your turns. Remove all demonic power points from each friendly unit, then gain 1 demonic power point for each friendly desolation token on the battlefield. So if I've got 3 on the battlefield, I'll gain 3 demonic power points. Then I allocate your demonic power points to friendly non-Hobgrot Helsmiths of Hashut units. Each unit can have a maximum of 3 demonic power points. Then all unallocated demonic power points are lost. So you just put all of the demonic power points on the units that you want. And like I said, those units power up, and you've seen those in either articles, or maybe you haven't seen them, I don't know, but we will cover them in this video. So they're going to be upgradable. Now, I think there's a real good question about how many you're going to be able to generate, how many units are going to be able to power up. You become stronger late in the game, and normally you want to be strong at the beginning of the game. So there's this thing we talk about in Wargaming called tempo. So the tempo of the army might end up being a little bit slower than maybe you want it to be. So we'll have to figure that out. But that's how it works. And so it means all demonic power points that are also applied to your army go away. That's quite important for the command ability that we're just about to talk about. So imagine this is like a reset. Everything goes away and you recount everything. So that's how you generate those. And then you have a command ability, which you can do in any hero phase, which is quite interesting about the timing. You pick a friendly, non-Hobgrot Helsmiths of Hashut unit that has no demonic power points to be the target. Then if the total number of demonic power points that friendly units have is 3 or fewer, then you could give 2 demonic power points to the target. So this means if in your army you don't have a lot of demonic power points, 3 or less, then you can give 2 out. However, if the total number of demonic power points that friendly units have is more than 3, give 1 demonic power point to the target. So the timing of these is going to be pretty interesting, but it means that you are also going to be using your command points to generate demonic power points if you think they're useful enough. Command points is a resource. Command abilities are an action that you can do using that resource, and there are generic ones like being able to have +1 to your save and +1 to hit. These are command abilities that you can use in Age of Sigmar. This means that you are going to be trading your resource for another resource, which is quite fun. I quite like the idea of you're trading gold. Command points I always see as gold for some reason. I don't know why. And then you're trading them up for the demon powers, which is quite interesting. There is maybe a downside to this in that what's happening is you are trading a resource that other people get to use for free. Not for free, but they get to use, and you're trading it for your in-game benefit. Other armies don't need to trade for that in-game benefit. They get something extra. Like Cities of Sigmar, they just have orders. They just get orders, and that's on top of being able to do command abilities. So as a Chaos Dwarf army, you might end up being more command point cheap, or like, poor, more command point poor than other armies are. So that's your suite of abilities. So the army is going to work by generating points, a bit of bookkeeping. There's a designer's note that says maybe you should use dice, but obviously create yourself amazingly cool, PowerPoint tokens, get some gems or do something really fun. Yeah, but it's going to be a CP-hungry army. It's going to be a CP-hungry army, and you're going to have to really think about when you're using those command points, when you're using those abilities. Those are your battle traits. Let's start looking at your battle formations. On your army list, you're going to choose one of 4 different battle formations to be the kind of style the army plays in, or how your army will play. And there are 4 to choose from, and we're going to go through those now. So when you're writing your army list, or when you're picking your army, you're going to choose a battle formation. So the first one, the Hashutite Host, gives you a passive called Amassed Legions. Each time, a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut infantry unit with the 3 demonic power points uses the rally command. This is a command ability to be able to make you heal models back into a unit, or heal wounds to a unit. You can make 3 additional rally rolls of D6. Now, this is a little bit disappointing because it would be nice if you just added +3 to the result, meaning you could heal a big multi-wound model, although there aren't any big multi-wound model hero like infantry units. This only being locked to infantry as well means you are going to focus on some of those. But the blunderbusses, an infantry missile unit, which we're going to talk about later, are a pretty effective unit, and their output's pretty good. So you're going to want to get as many of those back as possible. However, I don't feel like this is necessarily strong enough, and importantly, that unit needs to have 3 demonic power points given to it. Again, when we get to them, the blunderbusses are probably going to be a unit that you put 3 demonic power points on. So this would key in really well with those. So that's the first one. That's the Hashutite Host. The second one, the Bullfather's Horns, gives you the passive, the Bulls of Ziggurat. You add 2 inches to the move characteristic of friendly Helsmiths of Hashut cavalry and monster units while they have 3 demonic power points. Again, are necessary to require, all of these require you to have the unit have 3 demonic power points. But 2 inches to the move characteristic, especially on Bull Centaurs, is pretty nice. It's going to make them up to movement 10, and when they have 3 demonic power points, they'll add plus 3 inches to their charge because they have +1 for every DPP that they have. So you'll have move 10, and then charge at +3 bull centaurs. That feels pretty fast and is very nice. And again, they kind of combo together, right? I'm giving them demonic power points, so I want them to go faster, and then now giving them demonic power points also makes them faster. The Castigation Battery gives you the passive experimental munitions. You add 1 to the attack's characteristic of ranged weapons used by friendly Helsmiths of Hashut war machines. War machines is a keyword that we'll see located at the bottom of the war machines, battle scroll, not battle scroll, or war scroll, that's the word, while they have 3 demonic power points. So +1. So +1 to the attack's characteristic. Now, it's pretty good, but are you going to generate enough demonic power points that +1 attack is enough of a buff? Or are you going to be keying in with what those war scrolls also do and applying the demonic power points to them? And lastly, you have the Daemon Smith Cabal, which feels like the most obviously good one. Arcane Dominance, add 1 to the casting rolls, unbinding rolls, banishment rolls, and chanting rolls for friendly Helsmiths of Hashut wizards and priests while they have 3 demonic power points. This is pretty nice, especially if you take Urak, Tarr, our main character, because he's got the ability to move demonic power points around, which is quite interesting. He's also a 2-cast wizard, so +1 to cast is pretty nice, making you more effective to be able to put manifestations on the board or cast your spells. So of the 4, I like Arcane Dominance, and I think I also like the Bullfather's Horns. But it's a little lame that you always need to have 3 demonic power points on a unit, because this means that, like, if I want my buff that I get, I also need to be spending my resources. And then linked with each other is pretty good because it really adds to the theme of the army. But I do wonder if I'm going to end up only selecting certain units and only feeling like certain units are performing at full power when they're powered up. I also, just side note as well, I like the idea of like smithing. Like, I like the idea that it's like they smith and they improve the armor, which is very, very good for the Helsmiths. That's quite cool. Anyway, let me know which one is your favorite. Those are the 4 that you can choose from. After you've decided what battle formation you're going to take, one of your heroes is going to be able to have a heroic trait. There are 3 to choose from. You cannot put a heroic trait on a unique character, so you cannot put it on Urak, Tarr, but you can put it on your Demon Smith or your Demon Smith on Taurus as an example. So there are 3 to choose from, and you get to write one down free on your army list on a hero. So the first one is an eye for weakness, and you use this in your hero phase. You pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of this unit to be the target. Until the start of your next turn, you add 1 to wound rolls for combat attacks made by friendly Helsmiths of Hashut units that target that enemy unit. Now, this is not once per game or once per battle, so this is actually pretty nice. You just keep picking a unit and getting +1 to wound with a lot of your combat pieces. And you do have some really good combat pieces. You have Dominator engines, you have Bull Centaurs, and even in the right situation, maybe some Spear guys get +1 to wound is not a bad shout. And again, you're going to be able to keep using this, so I don't hate that. I don't think that's actually that bad an ability. 18 inches is a nice, good range, so I think it's actually pretty good, especially if you're planning on becoming much more combat orientated as an army. Next up, you have an ability which is very fun called Fire You Worms, which is done in the enemy charge phase. You pick a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut infantry unit that is not in combat and is wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. Now, this means you're either going to choose either of the 2 Infernal Razers, which is your infantry missile unit. You've either got the guys with blunderbusses or the guy with flamethrowers. Flamethrowers. Okay, and they're both interesting. You'll get 1 shot per blunderbussy on a unit of 5 upgradable to a unit of 10, or you get 3 shots on the flamethrowers on a unit of 5 upgradable unit of 10. So you're either going to have 10 or 30 shots that you're going to be able to use. Okay, the target, which is the unit with the missile weapon, can immediately use the shoot ability as if it were your shooting phase, and all attacks must target the same enemy unit, and that enemy unit picked to be the target of the attacks must have charge this turn. If the unmodified hit roll for any of those attacks is a 1 or a 5, the attack sequence, 1, 2, 5, sorry, the attack sequence fails and the attack sequence ends. What this means is you're only going to hit on 6s. Now, the blunderbusses shoot 18 inches and the flamethrowers only shoot 12 inches. So you're going to have to be pretty close with the flamethrowers, but you get a lot more shots, 30 shots. That means you'll hit 5 times. But you get to shoot much farther away, obviously, with the blunderbusses. you'll be hitting on 6s and you'll only have 10 shots. So you'll probably only hit with 1, maybe 2, which is pretty sad. So that's a little bit disappointing. But this is still interesting because obviously you can also stack this with covering fire, which is the ability to also shoot in your opponent's turn, which is a command ability. However, as an army, you're going to be a little bit command point poor, which is a little bit sad. You're not going to have as much money as the other armies, so you're not necessarily going to be spending as many command points on, other little things. So this one's interesting. We'll have to run the math on it in the future and see what it's like. But the name is great. Fire you worms. Very cool. Last up, you've got Servile Automaton. You use this ability in the deployment phase. You pick a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut Automaton unit. Now, this is going to be either of the Domination engines, which whatever the name is, the 2 big cow monsters. And you've either got a flamethrower version or you have a combat version with the Bane Maces. For the rest of the battle, the target is this unit's bodyguard, and the following effects apply. While this unit is in combat, so while the unit or the hero that you have with this ability is in combat, and its bodyguard is within its combat range, which is 3 inches, its bodyguard has strike first. That's pretty good, especially with the Dominator engine with Bane Maces, because it has the ability to strike twice, because if it's targeting an enemy hero specifically, there's a stipulation to it. So strike first is really good on that guy, but strike first is generally good anyway. Now, the Dominator engines definitely want to be charging because you get +1 damage on the charge, but with 3 demonic power points, you're going to get a lot of extra attacks. So you can build a really fighty guy, which is very cool. So I like that. It's fun. And if this unit is infantry, it has a 5-up ward save while its bodyguard is within its combat range, which is nice. It's nice to get a 5-up ward save on either your priest or your Daemon Smith on foot. I don't think they have an innate way to get a ward save straight off the bat, so that's a nice way to get a ward save on them, make them a little bit more survivable, and make it so your opponent doesn't want to charge them. So of the 3, I think I like the Servile Automaton one the most. The +1 to wound is actually probably pretty important, and obviously the Fire Your Worms is very fun. Like the heroic traits, Artifacts of Power, there are a resource that you can choose from. There are 3 that you can pick on your army list, or 3 to choose from, and you can write 1 on your army list. And you again give it to a hero, cannot be to a unique hero. So the first one, the Crucible of Spite, is once per battle in your hero phase. Give up to 3 demonic power points to this unit. However, you cannot then go on to give any more demonic power points to this unit for the rest of the battle. I love this one, personally. I like this one a lot because if you're running Urak Tarr is going to give you the ability to move demonic power points around. So you can get quite interesting early game with spiking your demonic power points, especially if you're looking to add a lot of output potentially early into your army. That could make that quite interesting. Otherwise, buffing up a single individual character for a turn is quite cool. So that's the Crucible Spite. But once per battle, your hero phase. So only once per battle. The next one, the Gauntlets of Punishment, is used in your shooting phase. You pick a visible enemy within 12 inches, roll a d3 on a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. So just some mortals, which is kind of interesting because one of the spells or the prayers also lets you pick a piece of terrain and do AoE mortals around it. So you could potentially try and keep spiking mortals into high armor save units, which is quite fun. Now, the next one I think has got most people very excited, the Scroll of Petrification. Once per battle, so only once, any hero phase, which includes your opponent, you can pick a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. For the rest of the turn, the target has a 2-up ward save. More on that later. So obviously that's after your armor save. And the target cannot use non-passive abilities or to pick to be the target of friendly abilities. You can't fight. You can't move. You can't do anything effectively. You could do nothing, right? And then enemy units can ignore the target for the purposes of movement, charging, or setting up on the battlefield. So they're also not going to lock units in combat. You're not going to be able to clever like that and lock units in combat. But effectively, you can just stand on an objective, create a screen that has a 2-up ward save. Pretty nice. A screen that your opponent can't get through to get to your war machines, like a wall of rock. And if you don't know why that happens, in Chaos Dwarf lore, as they use magic, they turn more and more into stone. So that's kind of the idea. Now, all of this is very fun, very engaging, and you can do some really interesting things on the tabletop. One of the major issues, I think, here is that currently in Age of Sigmar, there are lots of anti-ward or turning off ward save mechanics that exist in the game, which maybe reduces how effective this could be. But again, if you're playing casual games with your friends, run a bunch of units, run a unit onto an objective, turn them into stone, that's quite fun, and that's really engaging to use. So of the three, I really enjoy Crucible of Spite, getting the additional demonic power points, but I think the Scroll of Petrification can A, be a fun thing to do, but also could be a really clever thing to use at the right point in a game. Your wizards all have access to a spell lore. There are 3 spells to choose from: Ashen Smog, Hateful Fractures, and Molten Metal. The first one we're going to talk about is Hateful Fractures, because you can see by the keywords at the bottom, it's a spell, but it's also an unlimited spell. So if you have multiple wizards, each wizard will be able to cast it once per turn in your hero phase, whereas the other 2 spells, only one wizard is going to be able to attempt to cast it. So that's what the unlimited keyword means. So Hateful Fractures is your main spell ability. And don't forget, Chaos Dwarfs, one of the main features about them, as well as being weaponsmiths and, like locking demons into weapons, they're magicians, and dwarves shouldn't be magicians. So you hope their spell lore really reflects the power of that. So this is a casting value of 6, which is 6+ to cast. And you pick a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut wizard to cast his spell. Pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of them to be the target. Halve the target's move characteristic until the start of your next turn. So you slow them down. Now, this is pretty good if you are building a gun line, or you don't want them to get over as fast as you. It's also pretty nice if your opponent is trying to do a battle tactic, if they are trying to move a unit out of the way of their units, which is something that sometimes happens. Units get locked in and they fall over themselves, which is quite funny. It's quite nice to be able to do between 2 impassable pieces of terrain and kind of lock a unit where it is, which is quite good. 18-inch range is quite good as well, but I won't lie, it's not a particularly incredible ability that makes you really excited to constantly cast it, but it's an unlimited spell, just slowing your opponent down. That's what we've got. Next up, Ashen Smog is cast on a 7. You pick a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut wizard to cast his spell. You pick a terrain feature within 18 inches of them that has had a Desolation token added to it to be the target. That terrain feature has the obscuring ability, most of them already do, until the start of your next turn. Then you roll a d3 for each enemy unit contesting the target terrain feature, so being within 3 inches. On a 2+, you inflict an amount of mortal damage equal to the roll on that unit. Now, this doesn't sound like a big deal. I get that. You're not that bothered about it. But you pick enough, you do this enough times over the course of the game. That's a lot of splash mortal damage to be potentially adding on to the enemy army. And again, it's elective, right? You have wizards in your army already, so you can just be like, do you know what? I'm going to pop some mortals on that there. That's pretty nice. I'll back this up with some shooting later. So I think that's not like a bad spell. It just doesn't sound super great when you listen to it. But if you do it over the course of the game, I think there's a lot. And lastly, Molten Metal is cast on an 8, so it's a high casting value. Maybe you want to use the battle formation to give yourself plus to cast. And you pick up friendly Helsmiths of Hashut wizard to cast his spell, and you pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of them to be the target. Then make a casting roll of 2d6. Roll a number of dice equal to the unmodified casting roll, and inflict 1 mortal damage on the target for each roll that equals or exceeds the target's save characteristic. So this means you're going to be casting at least 8 dice. And again, if you've got a good armor save, like the new Carriage on Overlord's boats, which have a 2-up armor save, that's potentially 7 mortal damage that you're going to be able to do at range. That's a lot of mortal damage to good armor save units, which is good because rend might be something that's a little bit hard to come by in this army for certain units. This gives you another way of doing it. So as a collection of spells, you've got a great mortal wound range spell. You've got the ability to slowly or slightly limit the movement of enemy units. And you've got the ability to do some additional mortal damage and also create obscuring piece of terrain if that's something you think is useful for your army. Via Ashen Smog, which is quite fun as well. Don't forget, obscuring terrain doesn't just make stuff obscured. Also, it reduces the shooting range of enemy units as well in the right situation, which could be quite fun. Those are your spells. Does that feel like a set of Chaos Dwarf spells to you? Let me know. You also gain access to a prayer lore, and those can be chanted by priests. You've only got 1 priest in this book, So that is going to be the person doing your prayers. So there are 3 to choose from, and like spells, you have a prayer that's unlimited. So if you have multiple priests, each one can attempt to cast it. Each one can attempt to cast it per turn versus the others. So the first one, the Black Flames of Hashut, is a casting value of 4. Some people have asked, or a lot of people have asked actually, I even saw in the Helsmiths of Hashut Reddit, hello to all of you, that some people are very confused by this. There are sometimes multiple casting values in a prayer. So unlike a spell, if I attempt to cast a prayer, let's say it's a casting value of 5, and I roll a 6, or whatever number I roll apart from a 1, I can just keep those points for later. I can be like, do you know what? I'm going to bank those points so I have 3 or 5 or whatever it is that I roll. So then the next time I roll, I can add those points onto it, and so I can use the empowered version. So that's why there are different casting values, which some people are confused about. So a prayer is done on a single d6, and this one is cast on a 4, so 50% of the time. You pick a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut priest to chant this prayer, and you pick a visible enemy unit within 12 inches. Roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in the target unit. That's crazy. You know, a unit of 20 models, you're going to roll 20 dice. For each 5+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. If the chanting roll was an 8 or more, then it's going to be for every 4+ on the target instead. Killing a third or 50% of a unit is great. And being able to do this multiple times is good, but the question is, are we going to take multiple priests in our army? Is that going to be effective? Because outside of this prayer, what else will it do? So a great prayer, lots of people talking about the fact that that's half of a unit that's got 1 wound. I think that's really obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. So that's what that prayer does. The next one, Furnace Blessing, is on a 4, and you pick a visible friendly Helsmiths of Hashut unit wholly within 12 inches to be the target. Then you add 1 to the rend characteristic of the target's melee weapons for the rest of the turn. If the chanting roll was 8 or more, then you get crit mortals. Now, this is really good because you don't have any rend on your infantry units, or you have situational rend on your infantry units. On your bull centaurs, they have crit mortals built in, so you're not too bothered about that. And on the alternate build to the bull centaurs, the wardens, they probably could do with getting crit mortals, actually. That would be pretty decent. Or they could all do with having pluses to their rend. So actually, this is a prayer that you probably want to do, but you can only do this the one time. So you're only going to pick 1 unit to gain this buff, and like with the kind of theme of the book, maybe that's a unit you've also buffed up with demonic power points. Now you're giving it +1 rend, maybe giving it crit mortals, so that's quite nice. So it's good to have that because you need it more than it's a bonus. It's more like definitely need that. The last one, Storm of Obsidian Shards, is cast on a 5. You pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches. You inflict D3 more damage on the target. You subtract 3 from the target's control score. So you remove 3 from their control score for the rest of the turn. If the chanting roll was a 10 or more, you could pick a second eligible target. So that's going to be D3 mortals and down 3 from their control score, which genuinely might be impactful. A unit has a control characteristic. If there are 10 models in a unit and their control characteristic is 1, they'll have a control score of 10. 10 lots of 1 will equal 10. So reducing that down by 3 can be pretty effective. But to quote my friend Tobias in the chat, control score is 0 if everything is dead. So that's also a nice bonus to have. And just D3 mortals at 18 inches is also good. It's a little bit more poke mortal, as well as maybe blowing up a piece of terrain. That's quite nice. Maybe using the gauntlets as artifacts, doing all of our missile weapons and our artillery, potentially throwing a lot of damage in there. So as a suite of prayers, we've got the ability to do some mortals at range and reduce some control score, improve the melee output of one of our units, and then we've got the ability to clear hordes of units potentially from the enemy. But again, we're going to require our priests to do this, and we've only got the 1 priest in the roster. It's at this point I should just point out that you don't have any manifestations or any terrain for the Helsmiths of Hashut. Normally, this is when you would add this into like the battle traits and everything else that you would be reviewing, but they don't have them right now. I'm very excited for these in the future. Obviously, we're missing a train. I'm really hopeful for a little train that can make choo-choo noises, which would be really good. Looking forward to that, and obviously some manifestations would be cool as well, especially if we were to gain like being able to summon Kadai, so some demons and summon them up. That would be very cool. I'd like that. But they're not in here, so you are going to have to pick on your army list when you are writing a Helsmiths of Hashut army list. You're also going to pick some of the generic manifestations, so the Morbid Conjuration manifestation, Twilight Sorceries, any of those. And you could always kitbash them to be thematic like a Helsmiths army that you wanted it to be, which is fun. Like, you don't have to buy them. You can just, put them together. We're now going to start looking at the War Scrolls. And as I've said, we don't know points at the moment. So a fun game that me and the chat have been doing, and also you're going to be able to do at home, is when we go through these unit profiles, let me know in the comments how many points you think these units are going to be worth. This would be pretty fun, especially when we know the points are coming out soon. I'm guessing Urak Tarr at around 420 points. Also, let me know if you think that's too many points or not enough points. It's just a big guess. And it's pretty fun. I've got all sorts of types of players in the chat talking about it, so we're having fun. So Urak Tarr is your named leader of the Helsmiths of Hashut, the first Daemon Smith kept alive for a long time. Now, he's got a bunch of war keywords at the bottom here. He's a war master, so if he is in your army, he is your army's general, and therefore can have a regiment with 4 units inside of it. He's unique, so you can only have one of him. He's a hero, so anything that's anti-hero is going to get him. He's a monster, so anything anti-monster is going to get him. He's a war machine, so anything any war machine is going to get him. He's also a wizard. He's also a wizard too. That's important. That makes him as good as a wizard as Kairos Fate Weaver himself, which is pretty incredible. He's also got the fly keyword, which is nice. So, what's his job in your army? Well, I think he's intrinsic to the DPP economy, which doesn't sound very exciting, I know, and might have an amazing combat profile as well. So let's get into it. So Urak Tarr's got 16 health and a 3-up save, and he moves 10 inches and a control value of 5. So when you're moving on to an objective, you're going to control a 5. He's also a 2-cast wizard. So if you want to put manifestations on the board or anything like that, that's great. He's also going to get bonuses to cast. We'll talk about that in a moment. So casting 2 spells, really solid. And again, comparable to someone like Kairos. So think about like that. 3-up armor save is amazing as well, and we can also get more defensive in a moment. Let's talk about the output, though. He's got shooting attack, which is 18-inch range, which is very far. 6 shots, but they hit on 4s, they wound on 4s, they're only rend 1, and they're D3 damage. They're crit 2 hits, and they shoot in combat. Now, I quite like this, to be honest, because it's just an additional thing. Don't think about this as being overly important. That's not why you're taking him. But you can just be like, do you know what? I'm just going to shoot those 6 shots all the time, burn stuff in combat, and sometimes you're going to roll well. But with 6 shots hitting on 3s, hitting on 4s, wound on 4s, it's going to be like you hit 3 times, you wound maybe twice, rend 1, they're probably going to save 1, you might do D3 damage. But crit 2 hits is effectively +1 to hit, so it's like not too bad. In combat, though, that's where I think it gets more interesting. So him himself, he's got a combat profile weapon called Dumalaz, which is 4 attacks that hit on 4s, which is sad. Wounds on 3s. It's only rend 1, even though it's a demon powered inside of a weapon. And it's damage D3. Pretty cool. Just a lot of attacks that are damage D3. And then the mount, Gorok's Horns and Hooves, which there's a little bit of a mistake on this battle scroll here where it says that if he's battle damaged, his rend goes up. That's obviously wrong. It's either 6 attacks, or if he's taken 10 damage, it goes down to 4 attacks. So he hits on 4s, wounds on a 2, is rend 2, which is very good for this army, and is damage 3. And on a charge, he gets +1 to damage. Now, 6 attacks, damage 4, puts it near Bloodthirster levels. Genuinely really decent. Genuinely very good. You can use all-out attack, which is a command ability, although you are going to be pretty command hungry as an army, to be hitting on 3s, wound on 2s, rend 2, damage 4. This is very good, in my opinion. And it's very, very fun, but hitting on 4s is sad. Minuses to hit are going to really wreck the output. But the real question is this a bonus to being also a 2-cast wizard? Let's talk about what you get if you are using your demonic power points. You get to use the Peerless Among Demon Smiths passive, where you apply the effects below, and if you have 1 demonic power point on this unit, it has a 6-up ward save, which is a save you do after your armor save. Then if you have 2 demonic power points, you add 1 to the casting rolls, which is pretty nice, so 2d6 +1. In addition, you have a 5-up ward save. So realistically now, 16 health, 3-up save, 5-up ward save make this a very survivable character, but you do have to use your demonic power points. And lastly, if you give them 3 demonic power points, you add 2 to the casting rolls for this unit. In addition, this unit has a 4-up ward save against spells, prayers, and manifestation abilities used by manifestations. Otherwise, it has a 5-up ward save. So, you know, that's a lot of survivability potentially baked in. But as we go through these, remember, where are you going to be putting your demonic power points each turn? If you're sending him into combat, sure, power him up with a 5-up ward save. That feels really sensible. Early game, maybe give it some other units. Now, the reason I really like Urak Tarr is because of his ability, Master of Demonic Power, which is used in the enemy hero phase. You remove up to 3 demonic power points in total from any combination of friendly units wholly within 18 inches of this unit. Then allocate them to different friendly non-Hobgrot Helsmiths of Hashut units. Hobgrots are a unit in this army. There's one non-Chaos Dwarf unit in this army. It's a unit of Hobgrots, Hobgrot Vandals. So that's the only unit you can't assign demonic power points to. And then wholly within 18 into this unit. So you take up to 3 demonic power points from different units, and then you put them onto one unit wholly within 18 inches. Now, this is a cool ability because it's done in the enemy hero phase. So what happens is you charge, like I do some shooting maybe with my blunderbusses, give them additional rend, then I suck up all those demonic power points and I put them into my spear defensive unit so that they get a 5-up ward save, or maybe only put 2 points into them so you get a 5-up ward save. That's pretty nice. That means I can be more reactive and a little bit more bookkeeping, but it means that Urak Tarr feels like it's the reason. It's the reason that you would take him, is because being able to reapply all these points. He's also got a cool spell, which is cast on a 7, called the Curse of Stone. You pick a point on the battlefield within 9 inches of this unit and pick a second point on the battlefield within 9 inches of the first point. Draw a line between the caster and the first point, and between the first and second points. In each enemy unit, the line passes across. You roll a dice, or a d3. On a 2-up, you inflict a amount of mortal damage. Now, sure, you're not going to be super impressed by that, but if you also blow up some terrain with a spell or prayer from earlier, whichever one it is, you're starting to do a lot of mortal damage onto units. Sure, they're always on 3-ups, but it's consistently a lot of potential mortal damage, which is nice. And with 3 demonic power points, and in the other battle formation, he's going to be +3 to cast, which is pretty spicy. And then lastly, we have a rampage called Pitiless Trampling. Once per turn army in any charge phase, if this unit charged this phase, you can pick an enemy unit within an inch of it to be the target. You inflict D3 mortal damage on the target, then roll 2d6. This unit can move a distance up to the value of the roll. During this move, this unit can pass through models in the target unit, but must end that move in combat. So must end the move in combat. So that's also really nice as well. Move 10 inches. It's also a monster. So it's going to be able to, in the other battle formation, if it has 3 demonic power points, it's going to get +2 to move. So if you decide to not give it the casting bonuses, instead you could be moving 12 inches, charging, smashing some stuff, casting some spells, moving demonic power points around. There's a lot of fun stuff to do here. And what's nice is the demonic power points doesn't feel like it's necessary. You know, if you're not too worried about him dying, you don't need to put demonic power points onto this unit. Instead, you can just move those around. So it feels pretty important as a character. Let me know what you think. Very cool profile, 420 points, that's my guess. Let's move on. Another thing I like about Urak Tarr is when we take the heroic trait or the artifact, whichever one it is, that generates us 3 demonic power points once per turn. That means we can just have like a War Despot, for example, or a Daemon Smith on foot who just generates those. We're not too bothered about giving them demonic power points for the rest of the game, but it means that we can move them in the enemy hero phase to potentially have 2 of our, let's say we've got 2 spear units, they get 5-up ward saves with demonic power points, means we can hoover them off them and put them onto the other unit. So we can have early in the game more demonic power points than we maybe should, maybe like turn 1 or turn 2, and obviously because we scale, getting more demonic power points as we go later. And I'm saying we because we're all playing Chaos Dwarfs, right? So that's what I like about Urak Tarr as well. So now our next unit is a Daemon Smith on Infernal Taurus. So it's the alternate build to Urak Tarr. And you can have multiple Daemon Smiths on Infernal Tauruses running around the board, which is actually not a bad choice. Just this weekend alone, we saw a GT won by someone running 4 Maw Crushers, or Mega Bosses on Maw Crushers, so pretty interesting. Now, it's only a 1-cast wizard, which is worth about 100 points. I think this guy could probably be worth about 320, 340 points. He's still a monster, he's still a hero, still a war machine, so you're going to be able to make him run your regiments, which is pretty nice. So, a 1-cast wizard with 15 health, a 3-up save, moves 10 inches, could move 12 inches if given 3 demonic power points and used in the right battle formation. Has got control value of 5. Like Urak Tarr, pretty much the same for applying demonic power points to this unit, apart from no pluses to cast. On a 1, this unit has a 6-up ward save. On a 2, this unit has a 5-up ward save. On a 3, this unit has a 4-up ward save against spells, prayers, and abilities by manifestations. Otherwise, that's a 5-up ward save. So copy and pasted over. Again, whoever's made this war scroll also made a mistake here. If this unit has taken 10 damage, the attacks characteristic of the horns and hooves is for. And that's where I think this unit becomes quite interesting, because actually if this unit ends up cheap enough, Daemon Smiths that can move 10 inches, charge, and have got 6 attacks, damage 4 on the charge are pretty exciting. Genuinely, I think that's pretty fun. The actual Daemon Smith himself has only got 3 attacks, damage D3, and you get a worst version of the flame weapon, although still with crit 2 hits, with 3 attacks, damage D3. So a lot of these running around the board, you know, like kind of monster trucks that you would see for destruction, is quite interesting, you know, like an ogre charge, a 3-up armor save, potentially 5-up ward saves, smashing in stuff really early, feels pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie to you. But if you like bull centaurs, and boy do I, then there's got a great ability called Unholy Stampede, which is a passive. While a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut cavalry unit is wholly within 12 inches of this unit, that unit can use a retreat ability and still use charge abilities at the same turn. Now, I think the Bull Centaurs specifically are a pretty good combat unit. So retreating them out, getting pluses on the charge is very spicy, and I like that a lot. And then also, no mortal damage is inflicted on the unit using those retreat abilities. And what's nice is this affects multiple cavalry units if you can get them within base size, although Bull Centaurs will have a really big base size. Lastly, he's got his own rampage called Immolating Presence, which is done at the end of any turn. You pick an enemy unit in combat with this unit to be the target and roll a dice. If the roll exceeds the target's health characteristic, one model in the target unit is slain. And that's not bad for killing things like, you know, a Croxigore that's just you're fighting or something. So overall, I haven't run the numbers on the output of these, but several of these could be a lot to deal with. Good armor saves, pretty fast, good damage output, quite interesting. They're a level 1 wizard, so they can, you know, start slowing down movements of enemy units. Those are all quite nice. You know, even just a level 1 wizard is worth about 100 points, even just for dispelling or trying to shut down enemy spells. Having a frontline combat character is nice. Many armies don't have something like this. So I think 320 would be okay with that, and it wouldn't be too bad. Taking multiples of them would be very fun. I should point out Croxigores have 6 wounds, so you can't kill a Croxigore. I apologize. Our next hero is an Ashen Elder. What's important about the Ashen Elder is the Ashen Elder is a priest. Let me know, a priest should be at least 100 points. This priest, though, has got 6 health and a 4-up save, so it's a pretty tanky priest, to be honest. Moves 4 inches, slow, control value 2. Now, obviously not a good combat profile with 3 attacks, 3s, 4s, rend 1, damage D3. This wounding on 4s for dwarfs is A, upsetting, and B, something we're going to come back to later. So he's got an ability called Extract Power at the end of your turn. If this unit is contesting an objective, a place of power or terrain feature, and that objective place of power or terrain feature has a friendly desolation token, you can give this unit 1 ritual point. A ritual point is a point that you use for casting your prayers. So it's a way of letting you quickly get to those more empowered versions of the prayers. It's not too bad. This isn't also once per turn army, so if you did decide to go for multiple Ashen Elders, then you would be able to generate multiple of these points per one, which is not too bad. Okay. And then you have Stoked Fanaticism, which is a passive. You ignore the first damage point allocated to each friendly non-Hobgrot Helsmiths of Hashut unit each phase while wholly within 6 inches of this unit. Now, wholly within 6 inches is pretty tough when you've got some large models. However, you can add 6 inches to the range of this ability for each demonic power point this unit has. Now, this is pretty nice. You can have a 24-inch aura of Stoked Fanaticism, but that 3 demonic power points you spent means that neither of the 2 characters we've just looked at have a 5-up ward save. So you are constantly asking yourself, where do you want to apply the demonic power points to buff your army up? Now, the prayers are really good. So I would say that the abilities aren't strong enough that I care, but the prayers are really good, especially as we've got the +1 rend to melee attacks and crit mortals. So it feels like an Ashen Elder is something that you are going to put inside your army and you're going to want to use. Obviously ignoring the fact that every model is a sick model. So definitely something that you're going to want to see play. Maybe you're going to see this be 120, 140 points as a priest that can do something. But again, a big suck for your demonic power points. Is it really worth what you're putting in? Our next hero is a Daemon Smith, just a Daemon Smith on foot and a level 1 wizard. So probably worth 120, 140 points. Pretty tanky wizard as well with 6 health and a 4-up save. Control value 2. And he's got a shooting attack at 18 inches, which is hit on 4s, win on 4, so we won't talk about it, and also a combat profile we won't talk about. Now, the reason you're going to bring a Daemon Smith along, apart from being a cheap wizard, if that's what you're aiming for, is the ability Molten Mending, which is done once per turn in your army. So if you have multiple Daemon Smiths, you're going to be able to do it once, and you do it in your hero phase. You pick a friendly Helsmiths of Hashut war machine. Now, it's important to remember, many of your units are war machines. Both Urak, Tarr, and the Daemon Smith on Taurus are war machines. Your war machines are war machines. And your Dominator engines, which are your big bull monsters, are also war machines. So you have a lot of options for war machines here. Anyway, you pick a friendly war machine unit wholly within 6 inches, which is a pretty limited range. Add 6 inches to the range's ability for each demonic power point this unit has. You heal D3 plus X, where X is the amount of demonic power points that you have. So if you fully charge up a Daemon Smith, then you can be healing 6 health to a war machine at 24 inches, including in combat, because normally you're not allowed to heal stuff in combat. So that's a pretty big range for healing stuff. And there's lots of options in the book for who you would want to heal, which is pretty nice. If you don't even spend any demonic power points on this guy and just use them to babysit one of your big automatons, and if you take the trait that we looked at earlier, where you can make the automaton be the bodyguard, you could have the bodyguard and also be healing the bodyguard and fighting, Daemon Smith and bull monster together. And that's a pretty cool combo. So I think that's fun as well. So Daemon Smith, like 120, 100 points, a lot of combos you can do with the Daemon Smith, a lot of things you can do with those traits, and ultimately healing in an army is really effective when you can have a 3-up armor save, 5-up ward save. Our next hero is a War Despot. Now, War Despot is neither a priest nor a wizard. He's just a hero with infantry, and he fights in conjunction with your infantry units to make them better. So 6 health with a 3-up armor save, very defensive, very strong. He's got 5 attacks, 3s and 3s, which is amazing for a dwarf in Age of Sigmar 4. And then Rend 1, Damage 2. We sometimes call this the Holy Profile. But he's got Crit Mortals, which is pretty nice. I mean, 5 attacks. Sometimes you'll roll, 3 6s and you'll do 6 mortal damage and you'll feel like a champion. Now, the reason I say he's really good at fighting with infantry is because of an ability called Fight You Scum. You declared a fight ability for this unit as a reaction. Then you pick a friendly non-hero Helsmiths of Hashut infantry unit that has not used a fight ability this turn and is within this unit's combat range. We call this Fight Simultaneous as an ability. Sometimes these are rubbish, but this one's actually really good because the target unit can pick a fight ability immediately after the fight ability used by this unit has been resolved. If it's picked to do so, you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of its melee weapons for the rest of the turn. Now, that's pretty good. So when we look at the infantry units in a moment, fight these 2 simultaneously, +1 to hit, that feels... +1 to the attacks feels nice. Maybe we take the Scroll of Petrification, and then after this, we pick that unit to then be petrified. Charge onto an objective, do lots of fighting, petrify the unit so it can't get hit back. It can contest and hold that objective for as long as it needs. Those are really interesting mechanics that you're going to be able to use with a War Despot. In addition, he's also got a passive called the Black-Hearted Conqueror, where you add 3 to the control score of friendly Helsmiths of Hashut infantry units that are wholly within 6 inches of this unit. Add 6 inches to the range of this ability for each demonic power point this unit has. So I don't really think you can spend +3 DPP to add 3 to control score of units, but you might. There might be a situation where you need to do that. And again, those demonic power points being transferable with Urak Tarr gives you a lot of options, which I think is really good. So I hope you like this War Despot. I think it could be really fun if the infantry ends up being fun or the infantry ends up being cheap. So the first non-hero unit we're going to look at is one of 2 that I think are really important and also come in the launch box, which is pretty exciting. So the Infernal Cohort is a unit of 10 models, reinforceable up to a unit of 20 models. Now, each one of those models only has 1 health, and I'm going to come back to that in a bit. They've also got a 3-up armor save, which is decent. So they are similar to many other units in the game that have 3-up armor save, 1 health. But there are lots of other units, like Chaos Warriors as an example, which I think they should be compared to, that have 2 health and a 3-up armor save. They only move 4 inches. They've got a control value of 1. Now, if we go look at the keywords really quickly, we can see that they have an infantry, they have a champion, and they have a musician. So that champion is going to have +1 attack. The musician is going to help you with your rally roll and your flagman. Do you have a flagman? Yes. I think you have. I don't know if you have a flagman, actually. I don't think you do. Anyway, let's talk about the combat profile. A unit of 10 is going to have 20 attacks, with a champion 21 attacks. They hit on 3s, but they tragically wound on 4s, which is why I said earlier, if you were going to be taking the right heroic trait or whichever one it is, that gives you +1 to wound, you probably want that, because 3s and 4s is a pretty sad profile. Not as sad as the fact that there is 0 rend, and this makes very little sense to me. It's a spear, and also it's literally got a demon inside of it, and I really don't know what that demon is doing. I guess it's a demon of laziness, because it's adding nothing to your rend value, and I would have expected at least a pokey spear to be rend 1. It's damage 1, so yeah, there is a prayer for rend, so if I want to spend more points, and then also try and do a prayer to gain rend 1, which is interesting. But don't forget, as we talked about earlier, if you fight along with a war despot, so there is a lot of things you can do here. Let's talk about what you can do. If I fight simultaneously with a war despot, then I can have 3 attacks hitting on 3s, or crit mortals if I do the right prayer, which is pretty nice. So I could have 60 attacks from a unit fighting alongside a war despot that have crit mortals, that wound on 4s, or I can even have them wounding on 3s. They can have rend 1. I can actually make them rend 2 if I'm fighting against cavalry, and they're damage 1. So there's a lot of things that you can combo into this unit. Now, if you use your demonic power points on this unit, then you are going to get a 6-up ward save. I think we've seen this somewhere before, and I don't know where. It really, really makes me think of creativity when I see the same thing just copy and pasted over. But 6-up ward save, 5-up ward save for 2 demonic power points, and 4-up. Well, you know, it's a 4-up or a 5-up, depending on if it spells or not. A little bit disappointing. Now, the reason I said that this unit is pretty interesting is because of the ability that you use in your hero phase. If this unit is contesting an objective you control, so that's a stipulation. If this unit is contesting an objective you control, you pick a friendly, non-Hobgrot Helsmiths of Hashut unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit to be the target. On a 3+, you give the target 1 demonic power point. So this is a triple stipulation. I have to be contesting an objective, and I need to be wholly within 12 inches, and then on a 3-up, I gain a demonic power point. But I do want demonic power points. So I'm not mad about that. Now, there's a designer's note. You cannot make more than 1 roll for each objective in each turn, regardless of how many friendly units with this ability are contesting that objective. So if I did want to spam these guys, there's someone did me a nice little picture here. If I did want to spam them so I could get them farming, which I'm sure we used to have orcs and goblins to do for us. I don't know what's happened. But if I did want to spam them, I'm going to need to put them on different objectives to be able to do that. And also, it's only a 3-up. So I'm a little bit disappointed about that as well. But it is what it is, right? And if I do farm 1 demonic power point, I'm going to be able to make a unit have a 6-up ward save. There's a lot of like cost analysis that goes into this army, which is quite funny. Anyway, they also have another passive called Sacred Gongs. This unit's gong carriers are tokens. There's 1 gong carrier for every musician in this unit, which means you would have 2 gong carriers if you reinforce the unit up to a unit of 20. If this unit uses a rally command as a reaction, you can remove a gong carrier and make an additional rally roll of a d6. This does mean if we run the battle formation from earlier, then we would add 3 rally rolls if we gave this unit 3 demonic power points, and we could have 4 rally rolls for this unit, which means we could get potentially 2 models back. This is where this unit becomes very confusing for me as a reviewer, and maybe for you as a player, because they are 1 wound each with a 3-up save. So they're not chaff, because that 3-up save makes them pretty elite, right? That's pretty good profile. But their combat profile is pretty rubbish. They generate rally points, but only a little bit. So they generate, demonic power points, but only a little bit. And then they can have a ward save. Now, when my demonic power points, I'm not going to get a lot of them. And I'm probably not just going to use this on a defensive unit. Although, we'll talk about Urak Tarr in a second. So I want there to be, I would like to have a better unit, like a more elite unit that's got 2 health each, so that when I put those demonic power points on them, it's more valuable. Because if I take lots of Infernal Cohort, I'm going to have lots of different Infernal Cohort, but not enough demonic power points to power them up. So, and because the prayer that gives +1 rend is not an unlimited prayer, again, I can't really build a super killer unit out of this unit. I mean, I guess I could, like I said, with a War Despot and putting crit mortals on them. You really could, and I guess you could have lots of them, quite a few War Despots, a bunch of Infernal Cohorts, and throw them at units, which is interesting. But their main ability is not charging. Their main ability is if I'm holding objectives. And also, if I get charged, they get +1 rend. So I get +1 rend if I get charged, give them a ward save. Yeah, it's quite a confusing unit. Like, the army itself feels like it wants elite things to apply its limited demonic power points to, but this unit isn't elite unit, so it's very weird. And I would probably pay about 100 points for this, I guess. Now, the follow-up bit is, if you do have Urak Tarr, then when we talk about the blunderbusses in a minute, you would be able to potentially take demonic power points from your blunderbusses who are going to do combat, who are going to do good long-range shooting, and then transfer them to the Infernal Cohort so they've got a good defensive screen, which I think is quite interesting. So I think, yeah, like, maybe there's some play there, maybe multiple different units you have to see, but this one feels like interesting because I like generating more demonic power points. That's what I'm taking the unit for. Probably for very little else. The other, like the alternative build for the Infernal Cohort, they have Hashutite Blades. Hashutite Blades. So the Hashutite Blade, its attack profile is 2 attacks, hit on 3s, win on 4s, with 0 rend, damage 1. And again, anti-infantry +1 rend. So if you are hitting into infantry, you are going to get rend 1. There is a prayer for rend 2, for an additional +1 rend, or crit mortals, fight with a War Despot. There's definitely ways to make this unit much better. As a frontline combat unit, it's got 1 health, a 3-up save, move 4 inches, so they're pretty slow to get into a fight as well. Now, let's talk about that for a moment, because me and the chat have been having a chat. If these do end up at around 100 points, then they'll be comparable to other units like Warriors of Chaos or Ardboys, as an example, for their survivability. Unfortunately, their survivability is predicated on also being able to have enough demonic power points in the game. So the real question is are we going to generate enough? They've got 1 health, they've got 3-up save, again, like the other unit, 10 models, reinforceable up to 20 models. They've got the same gong ability to be able to add an additional rally. They've got the same ability here to generate a 5-up ward save if you spend 2 demonic power points. So, you know, you can make them very survivable. But again, are they is this a kind of a weird war scroll where actually it should be 2 health and they cost twice as much? We'll have to find out when we put them on the tabletop. You know, and a unit of 10, 20 dudes doing 40 attacks with potentially even just crit mortals or even rend 1. The win on 4s is a little bit sad, but maybe you almost instinctively have to get that +1 to wound to make them work. I know if I was building the launch box, I would build them with spears and I would not build them with blades. Now, they do have their own special ability, it's a bit embarrassing to say, called Discipline March. When making run rolls for this unit, if you roll a 1 to 3, you can use a value of 4 instead. Which, you know, I guess is the dwarf joke of terrible, you know, terrifying over short distances. This unit definitely feels the worst of the 2, but if you do have a combo that you think works really nice, or, you know, you think you can build this really well, or you just fancy putting a bunch of War Despots and these guys on the board, that might work. Genuinely might work. And then you could have a lot of them. If they end up being cheap, if these like 100 points each, you know, you can have a lot of these guys on the board, you know, fighting, smashing, sacrificing their gongs. Anyway, those are the 2 infantry units, but onto maybe my favorite infantry unit next. Now, this infantry unit, the Hobgrot Vandals, we've heard lots about them. They can't generate DPP. Well, no, that's not true. Hold on. They can't benefit from DPP. So the Hobgrot Vandals is 20 models. They've got 1 health and a 5-up save. So the difference between a enslaved Hobgrot covered in tin cans and a chosen of Hashut covered in full armor, same level of health. Same level of health. Anyway, they obviously are not good in combat, but you get 20 models, reinforceable up to 40 models. So with 2 attacks each, hit on 4s, wounded on 5s, no rend, exactly the same as a demon weapon, to be honest. Scavenge weapons, demon weapons, same rend. Okay? Damage 1. right? Now, they have an ability called Disposable Lackeys, where this unit can immediately use the normal move ability as if it were your movement phase during the deployment phase. This is actually super exciting for your Helsmiths of Hashut army, because you want at least one unit to move up the board, and you want to desolate pieces of terrain or objectives further up the board. But actually, it goes deeper than that. Because if you start looking at how Age of Sigmar games work, you really want what we... And this isn't just once per turn army. You can have multiple units of these. What you really want in an army is the ability to zone or screen. I did make a video about that for Age of Sigmar 3, and go and watch it. Most of the things still apply. Being able to zone or screen the board means you're protected from deep strikes, because even if your opponent goes first, they're not going to be able to teleport anywhere near you, which is great. You're going to be able to immediately go and trade on objectives. So I move this unit on or near an objective, so I can deny my opponent scoring more objectives than me. I can deny my opponent from maybe scoring pairs of objectives. I can deny my opponent maybe achieving battle tactics. There's actually so much you can do with what we call pre-game moves, and they're so rare that this is actually brilliant. And because they're probably rubbish, and well, they are rubbish and they're probably cheap, that's actually a pretty good mechanic. Like, if these had been just a unit and they didn't have that, they would be okay. But actually, this puts them into good/great, because it benefits your army in the ways your army wants to play by giving you breathing room. This is better than the spell that halves moves. If your opponent wants to charge you, best they can do is just charge into the screening unit. And yes, they can power through. And yes, there's lots of abilities that let you kind of 2d6 move around units or whatever. But actually, I can see myself wanting to have at least 2 units of Hobgrot Vandals in my army, be able to like give myself a bit of breathing room as I do some shooting. It also gives you a good opportunity to do counter charges, which one of your Bull Centaur units is going to be really good at doing. It gives you the ability to shoot at your opponent more or do covering fire, which is great. So some really good stuff here, which is super exciting. So Hobgrot Vandals, big thumb. So our first infantry range unit we're going to look at are Infernal Razers, and these have got flame hurlers, or like the flamethrowers, right? So this is a unit of 5 models, reinforceable up to unit of 10, whereas the other unit was 10 or 20. So you'll notice that that means that they're pretty fragile, with only 1 health each and a 4-up save. A 4-up save is fine, but that means either 5 or 10 health, which isn't a lot of health. You know, it's a fair point, and not really many ways to keep them very survivable, but maybe, you know, you take the character that lets them ignore a pip of damage, whatever it might be. Now, the reason you're going to take them is because of their Karuguthron flame hurlers, which are 12-inch range, which means you move 4, shoot 12. Oh, it's not too bad, 16 inches. And don't forget, there are objectives in the middle of the board. Also, your opponent might just end up charging you, because you do have some long-range weapons, which they might want to shut down. Either way, you got 3 attacks per model, hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s with no rend, although we'll come back to that, damage 1, and they have shoot in combat. This does mean we've got 31 attacks from a reinforced unit. Because they've only got 1 wound, they're more likely to be much, much cheaper, like 110 points, 120 points. In which case, you're going to be able to have a lot of these guys on the board doing a lot of shots. So actually, these might be better because they've only got 1 health, which is kind of a counterpoint to what I believe the other combat units are like. Because if they do end up being very cheap, you put a lot of shots on the board at a limited range. Now, they do have a passive called Manglers of Metal, and this is add 1 to the rend characteristic of this unit's ranged weapon for each demonic power point this unit has. This means the unit has got potentially rend 3. 31 shots at rend 3 is crazy. Now, it's worth pointing out that because they're cheap, you can get multiple units, but you're not going to have the DPP economy to make enough units have rend 3. But I guess you can situationally put the rend in the places that you really want it to, which is pretty good. So these are very interesting, especially a lot of them, even just stuck behind some Hobgrot Vandals. They get charged, then you start hosing them down. I think that's pretty spicy. Shooting combat is also nice if they end up being locked in combat, although I am going to be worried about their survivability. Now, they do have another ability called Scorched Remains, which is once per turn for the army, so you can only use it once and use in your shooting phase. If this unit uses shoot ability this turn and all of its attacks target the same enemy infantry unit, that enemy unit is the target. Roll a dice on a 3+, subtract an amount equal to the roll for the target's control score for the rest of the turn. Obviously, that's not super exciting as an ability. But I would think it's worth pointing out that tons of these guys with loads of flamethrowers is a crazy amount of attacks. that potentially can have a lot of rend. And so initially, maybe it doesn't sound super spicy, but I think people might get quite excited about this, like when you see it on the tabletop. And if you can play well, zone out, make it so your opponent doesn't charge these units, and then just burn stuff, oh, you're in for a fun time. Next up, we have the other version of the missile infantry, the Infernal Razers, but this time with the blunderbusses. And I had been telling you these are good, and I am right. So 5 models, reinforceable up to a unit of 10. They have got 1 health and 4 up save. So that same survivability issue that we might see from the other unit, although they might end up being cheaper, which is nice because the Grimzalok Blunderbussy is an 18-inch range shooting attack with only 1 shot each, which is pretty disappointing. Does mean 11 shots out of the unit, 1 for each model, and then an additional 1 for the champion. Somehow he fires 2 guns. They hit on 3s, pretty great. They wound on 2s. They have no rend, but for every demonic power point, you can add +1 rend. So it could be rend 3, and they're damage 2. I think a lot of people are going to immediately be very excited about these, even taking them in multiples without demonic power points. If you're shooting at the right units, that's a lot of potential damage 2 that you can do. They also have another ability, which I think is a key reason why you're going to take this unit, called Hateful Hail, which is done once per turn army, so only 1 unit in your army can do it in your shooting phase. If this unit used a shoot ability and all of its shots targeted the same enemy unit, that enemy unit is the target. Roll a dice and add the number of enemy models in the target unit slain by attacks by this unit. If the result is 6 or more, the target has strike last for the rest of the turn. Amazing. Because you're going to want to charge in and smash stuff at some point, whether or not it's with your Bale Tauruses or Urak Tarr or your Bull Centaurs. You're going to want to smash something, and have them strike last means you can hit with multiple units. Where also maybe this comes in really effective in this army is if we do end up with very cheap infantry hordes, because they only have 1 wound, then that means that making it strike last means you can hit them with multiple units before they hit you. Even if you're fighting a monster, shooting at them with a unit and hopefully rolling a 6 to make it strike last, and then hitting it with some stuff is also an opportunity in there. So I'll take that all day. Having the chance to do something versus the chance to do nothing is really good. Obviously, their output is pretty impressive as well, so I'd expect them to be a few more points, maybe like 140 points for 5. We'll have to see, but it's a very scary profile, and I think a lot of people will be worried about that, and that's good. And also, this is the reason your opponent is going to charge you. So maybe this is the reason you're going to have a spear unit that's anti-charge and is holding objectives and is generating demonic power points, because they want to shut this unit down and charge into you. Maybe your war machines, whatever it might be. But this is going to give your opponent a reason to want to attack you. So that's the Infernal Razers with blunderbusses. So seeing as we've looked at the missile weapons, we're going to start looking at the artillery pieces. There are 2. There's the Tormentor Bombard is the first one we're going to look at. It's got 8 health, a 3 up save, and it moves 4 inches. It's control value of 2. Now, the reason you're going to take it, you would think, is for its missile weapon. Its Torrent of Ruinous Energy is 30-inch range, very, very long, so you can start affecting your enemy very early in the game. 4 attacks that hit on 3s, win on 3s. They're only rend 1, and they're damaged E3. But if you're shooting at cavalry, it's +1 rend. If you're shooting at infantry, it's +1 rend. So you've really got the option on getting up to rend 2, which is pretty nice. And if you play in the right battle formation and you give them 3 demonic power points, you are going to be up to 5 attacks, which is quite a lot of attacks. Now, the reason that I really like this piece is because of its special ability, Ruinous Bombard, which is done once per turn in the army in your shooting phase. If this unit uses shoot ability this turn and all of its attacks target the same enemy unit, that enemy unit is the target. Then you can pick a number of enemy units within 6 inches of the target equal to the number of demonic power points this unit has. And roll a dice for each target. On a 3+, that target can't use commands for the rest of the turn. There's a lot of stipulation. I need demonic power points to be on the unit, and I need to roll a 3 up, which is like okay. And don't forget, I'm only going to get +1 attack on the mortar if the unit has 3 demonic power points. So it's kind of like an all-in situation. I've chosen the battle formation because I want the Tormentor Bombard to have 5 shots. I also am going to give it 3 demonic power points because I want to have 3 units turn off command abilities. And that's kind of okay. It really depends on what army in the meta is a real problem to you, or if your mate has got a unit that has a command ability that's always bugging you and making you annoying, which is quite interesting. So that's a nice ability, the Ruinous Bombard. And also, they can get naturally +1 to hit from Calculated Trajectory, which is a passive. Add 1 to hit rolls for this unit's shooting attack, the target enemy unit that are 5 or more models that are more than 12 inches from this unit. So you're going to get hitting on 2s, win on 3s, pretty spicy. We like that as well. So overall, a very interesting piece. I don't know if this doesn't just compete for the missile infantry for me, but they're very survivable. 8 health. 3 up save. They're going to be annoying to get rid of. Probably the easiest thing to do is to lock them in combat. So yeah, let me know what you think of this one. I think I'd pay maybe 160 points for this, maybe. Let me know what you think. Our next war machine is the Deathshrieker rocket battery. So the same survivability as the last piece, which is good. And its shooting profile is 24-inch range with 3 shots. Obviously, in the battle formation, it's going to be 4 shots. Hits on a 4, sad, but wounds on a 2, Ren 2, damage D3 +2. Now, it's got anti-monster and anti-war machine +1 Ren, so that's going to go up to Ren 3. This is great into other war machines and obviously great into monsters. Speaking of, it's got an ability called Hungering Flames, which once per turn in your army in your shooting phase, for the rest of the turn, the damage characteristic of this unit's missile weapon is 5 if the target is a monster or war machine. So you can have 4 shots, damage 5, Ren 3 into an enemy monster or into an enemy like war machine, which is really good. Cities of Sigmar cannons are a big deal right now in Age of Sigmar. So shutting that down is great. Obviously, my least favorite army, Gargants, 20 potential damage into one of those is wonderful. And even taking multiples of these, you still can potentially do 5 damage for each rocket shot, and will be Ren 3 into monsters. That's pretty scary. So just be conscious of that. And then they've got a reaction with this unit where your opponent declared a shoot ability for this unit and all of his attacks target the same enemy unit. It's called Watch Them Burn. And what you do is you roll a number of dice equal to the number of demonic power points this unit has for each other enemy unit that's within the combat range of the target of this unit's shooting attacks. For each 3+, you inflict 1 more damage on the target equal to the roll. Now, that doesn't sound super impressive, but we know earlier that we had a bunch of AoE damage. Urak Tarr can do line mortal damage. We have a prayer or a spell, I can't remember which blows up pieces of terrain to do more AoE area mortal damage. That could eventually stack up pretty aggressively, which I think is interesting. And if you had multiple Deathshrieker rockets and you gave them lots of demonic power points, you can do a lot of those. So, that's a big deal. That's very scary, and you can do a lot of stuff with that. Also, I think there's a typo on here. It says opponent declared a shoot ability. It'll be you declared a shoot ability, obviously. So that's something to be conscious of. But yeah, very strong. And I'd probably pay, I don't know, like 140 for this, I feel, is a fair amount. So our first cavalry unit we're going to look at are Anointed Sentinels. This is a unit of 3 models, reinforceable up to a unit of 6. Each model's got 4 health and a 4 up save, and they move 10 inches. But we do have a battle formation that can make it so that if this unit has 3 demonic power points, it can be moving 12 inches. Pretty nice. When we're talking about its range, projection, and threat, it's also got a passive called Crush the Unworthy, where you add 1 to the charge rolls for this unit for each demonic power point it has. I actually spent a long time thinking about this. 3d6 charge versus 2d6 plus 3. I don't know which one works out. I think maybe this. I don't know. It's still very effective. And so you're going to be charging pretty long way. Move 12 plus 3 to charge if you wanted to go that route. That's pretty nice. Let's talk about their combat profile. The Thrice Cursed Glaive. 3 attacks, hitting on 3s, wound on 3s, which is really nice because the dwarfs are not as good. They're Rend 1, but they're damage 2, but +1 damage on the charge. So they're going to be Rend 3. So this does mean you're going to get 19 attacks out of a reinforced unit at damage 3. I think everyone's going to be very excited about that. You can give them +1 rend via a prayer. You can give them crit mortals via a prayer as well, which is really nice. And don't forget, you can only give 1 unit crit mortals, and that's going to be important when we look at the Bull Centaurs, because I can see having a unit of Sentinels and a unit of Bull Centaurs and making them all have mortals, which is fun. Lastly, they've got an ability called Zealous Counterattack, where this unit has the strike first for the rest of the turn if you declared a countercharge ability for this unit. Now, that's pretty scary for your opponent. If you have Urak Tarr, trade 3 DPP off another unit, stick it on this unit, plan on doing a countercharge with this unit with +3 to it, which is very nice, and then you get strike first on the countercharge. You've blunderbussied a unit, they've got strike last. there's a lot of options in here now, which I think is fun. Yeah, tough is expensive because you've got to spend 2 command points of your very limited command points to make this unit good, but it's something your opponent must be aware of that you can do. So a pretty interesting unit. I like it. Very, very fun. And you can do some really fun stuff with it. Our next unit is the Bull Centaurs. This is the alternative build. I think this is the slightly better unit. Same profile, 4 health, 4 up save, move 10. It's their attack profile that's different in that they have 4 attacks, so 1 more attack. They hunt 3s, they wound on 3s, they're rend 1, they're damage 2. They also get +1 damage on the charge, but these have crit mortals built in. So unit of 3 reinforceable up to unit of 6 means you're going to get 24 attacks with a champion, 25 attacks with crit damage 3 mortals. Now, another cool thing, like we talked about earlier, is if you take the Daemon Smith on the Baal Taurus, we can give these guys retreat and charge if they're wholly within 12 inches. Well, it doesn't even cost any points. It's just an ability. So these combo charging with a Daemon Smith on a Baal Taurus for the full bull in a China shop effect, which I think a lot of people will be very exciting. So this is definitely a high point in the book, which I think people will be very excited about. Also fun, slowly move up a bunch of Hong bots early in the game. Then your opponent has to deal with them because they're on objectives, and then just smash in with the Bull Centaurs. Very cool. They also get +1 to charge for every demonic power point they have. So that's going to be +3 to charge. Also, if you take them in the right sub-faction, they're going to get +2 to move. Lastly, they've got an ability called Bull Charge, which is any charge phase, and you'll notice this is not once per turn army. So if you have multiples of these units, you'll be able to do it multiple times. If this unit charged this turn, pick a visible enemy unit within an inch, roll a dice for each model in this unit, and add the number of demonic power points this unit has to each roll. For each 6+, you inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. So if you have 2 units of 6 with no demonic power points, you're really only going to do 2 mortals. But if you have 2 units of 3, then you're going to do like 6 mortals on the charge, which is interesting as well. So these feel like that they're much more effective. Again, you don't have run and charge in the army. You don't have 3d6 charges, but you do have the +3. So you don't necessarily have the speed and mobility of other armies, but thanks to the blunderbusses and the war machines, you definitely can make your opponent want to charge at you, but thanks to your Hong bots, they're going to have to hit the Hong bots first. So I think Bull Centaurs feel like an absolute must-buy, and I could see people running 6 of these, running 12 of these, depends how many points they come in at, 180, 200 points, probably seems about right. We'll have to see how cheap they end up being, but you'll have a lot of cheap other stuff in the list as well. So next up, we have the 2 Dominator engines, sorry. They're both war machines. The first one is the Dominator engine with immolation cannons. Now, these are pretty exciting because they start with 2-up armor saves. They move 6 inches, and they've got a health characteristic of 10. 2-up armor save, 10 health. And don't forget, because they're war machines, we know that we can bring a Daemon Smith from earlier. We can heal at a crazy range if we wanted to do that, which is pretty nice. So the immolation cannons rocking on the Dominator engine is 5 shots, hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s, which is pretty yikesy. Rend 1, damage D3. But they're anti-cavalry +1 rend, and they shoot in combat. Now, the wounding on 4s is very bad, but you are going to potentially be able to generate a crazy amount of shots. They also have got 3 attacks, damage D3, hitting on 4s, with charge +1 damage, so D3 +1 in combat. Now, this gets really interesting thanks to the demonic strength that you're able to give this unit with demonic power points. For each demonic power point that you give this unit, you add 1 to its move characteristic, making the move 9, and add 1 to the attack characteristic of this unit, making it up to 6 attacks with its melee weapons and 8 attacks with its immolation cannons. And that's not where it ends, though, thanks to the passive All Must Burn. When making attacks for this unit, shooting attacks, if you pick more than 1 unit to be the target of this unit's attacks, add 2 to the attacks characteristic of this unit's immolation cannons for each target picked. However, those additional attacks must be split evenly between all targets picked. So, if you have 5 units in range, you can add 10 attacks onto this, which means 10 attacks onto the 8 attacks that you might have base, because you have 3 demonic power points attached to it. So a lot of attacks, but those a lot of attacks are only going to be rend 1. That's something worth pointing out. However, multiple Dominator engines, because this passive All Must Burn is usable amongst all of them, just wading into the middle of the board. Imagine them surrounded by Hobgrots. They have shooting combat, so they can just keep burning stuff down as much as they like, and you can bring some Daemon Smiths along to heal with them. You could even make one of these Daemon Smiths, make it so that a Dominator engine is your bodyguard. So very spicy, very interesting. Lots you can do here. So I think this could be very fun. Let me know what you think. Let me know how many points you think this might be. Let me know how excited you are about burning all that you see with a Dominator engine. I think 260 points, maybe 280 points we'll see on this. We'll have to see, but very exciting. Our last Dominator engine. I forgot to mention that these are war machines. They're also just single models. They're not units. It's just one model with 10 health, 2 up save, move 6 inches. It's got the same demonic strength. So +1 to its move and +1 to its attacks characteristic for each demonic power point. Now, don't forget, we know that we can make one of these be a bodyguard, give it strike first potentially, so that's pretty spicy. And it's Bane Maces, Dominator with Bane Maces, are 4 attacks each, so it could be up to 7 attacks, hitting on 4s, a little bit sad, but wounding on 2s, rend 1, very sad, with charge +1 damage, so damage 3. Really got to ask yourself, what's the purpose of this unit that's not Bull Centaurs? Because Bull Centaurs are damage 3, but crit mortals with 1 attack, the same amount of attacks per base. The Rend 1 is a little bit disappointing, I think. However, maybe that's made up for the fact that you can fight twice with this Dominator engine. The engine of domination, once per turn in any combat phase, if this unit is in combat with if this unit is in combat with any enemy heroes, it can use 2 fight abilities this phase. After the first is used, it's got strike last. This unit can only pick a second fight ability if it's still in combat with enemy heroes. So this is situationally based on fighting against enemy heroes, right? So that's worth pointing out. But we do know that we could use our blunderbusses from earlier to make units strike last. So potentially we could make an enemy hero strike last, charge in, fight it with a Dominator engine, and fight twice. I don't know. As a melee unit, it's obviously very survivable, but I think, depending on points, I probably would just prefer more Bull Centaurs. Although, 2 up save, lots of units are going to struggle to ever move this or get it off an objective. So that's interesting. Obviously, it combos really nicely with being able to be a bodyguard unit. So that is the Dominator engine. So that's it for the Chaos Dwarf review, but there are armies of renown and also regiments of renown to review, which I'll cover in another video. I got to say, I'm personally incredibly excited because I've been waiting for Chaos Dwarfs to return for a long time. I am a little bit concerned about the demonic PowerPoint economy. I'm a little bit concerned about making sure it's in the right places at the right time. And I think the overall consensus has been, from the chat and from me thinking about it and other people I've chatted with, is that depending on how Games Workshop points this, if they point it so that every unit already has 3 demonic power points, then the book might struggle a little bit. But if they point everything like it has no demonic power points, the book might be super cooked. There are definitely some standout units in here, I think. I think Spear Infantry feel like they're the best of them. The Blunderbusses and the Bull Centaurs feel very good. I quite like the Dominator engine as well. I think that's interesting. And one of the things that I'm very, very excited about is the Daemon Smith on Bale Taurus. I think depending on how cheap they are, especially because they combo so nicely with the Bull Centaurs, making them run around could be really fun. But Hobgrots are decent. You've got lots of utility. You've got the basically perfect gamut of stuff in your army. You've got priests, wizards, you've got chaff, you've got good combat units, you've got good shooting units. So you've got everything you could really want out of an army, I think. I think there seems to be some, like, I guess not narrative, but like weird cohesive elements. The 1 wound dwarfs feel very weird. I'd like to see them go up to 2 wounds. I don't really see how a Gut Ripper is 2 wounds, but those guys are 1. I think that seems silly, to be honest. But some of their output is crazy good. So I want to know what you all think, and I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Thank you for the chat for hanging out while we've done this. This has been very cool. And yeah, I'm just excited to see Chaos Dwarfs on the table. I'm looking forward to getting the box. Let me know if you're picking up the box as well. Oh, maybe a final thought. The box feels like a good pickup. Like, the price is decent. I said this in my video yesterday. The price is decent. Getting 2 boxes doesn't feel terrible either. I don't overly want a lot of the infantry, but if they end up being cheap, that's okay. A War Despot's pretty spicy. I like the idea of 2 War Despots in my army, charging, fighting twice. If you can flog the book away to someone, or even flog the code, actually not a bad box. I'm going to say that. So pretty decent. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. As always, I'll be making lots more videos when the book comes out. If there's anything I can do to improve my videos, please do let me know. And once again, thank you to everyone for watching. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.